taking back control of your energy. Control of your energy. What does that mean? And to answer that, I'm going to go on a bit of a personal journey with you, right back to 1987. So I'm showing my age. So the young people in the audience, bear with me. What does that mean? So I grew up in Northern Ireland throughout the Troubles, and that meant that there was a lack of choice. There was one electricity provider, there was one supermarket chain, there were only one transport company, and I didn't really understand what that meant and how we were living until I actually went across to the mainland. And in fact, it was Sheffield where I went to study at the age of 19. So shout out to the girls from Giraffe if you're in the room. I was chatting to them last night about Sheffield and how much it's changed. So there were places or retailers like John Lewis and other kinds of cool things that just didn't want to come to Northern Ireland. And we were sort of the second cousin, the underdog of the mainland UK. And that's not to get into a political statement, but it's just to get into my head of my why and why that has resonated with me throughout my personal journey and why we do what we do in the company. So let's go to today, 2025. So if you think back then, the manufacturers, large energy users, by the way, Matthew, wherever he is, when we're talking about energy, we're talking about keeping the lights on. We're not talking about your energy, and Matthew's got a lot of energy running around the stage. We're talking about lights on and the energy that is needed to power up your site. So back then, in 10, 15 years ago, the companies then were basically operating with a hand tied behind their back compared with the rest of the UK. Oh, sorry. Go back a step. Yeah, so we were paying then 34% more for energy than the rest of the UK. So bringing us up to 2025, what has changed? Not much. Why? That's why we need to look at control of your energy and who actually controls it. So at the minute, we live in a world that is centralized energy. That means that your electricity, your gas, your everything is centralized by the big providers. And what we need to move to is a distributed energy market. So all those little green dots represent you, your companies, wherever they may be. I've placed them here in the island of Ireland, but if we could get into a distributed energy system, we will be able to thrive. So distributed energy is creating little power stations right where you are. Why would you want to do that? Because you cannot count on lowering your energy costs. We've already seen what happened from the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the rise of AI data centers and the effect that has had on electricity and energy prices. They are centrally controlled, and just like back then, whenever I was growing up, dictated to by things you can't control, and that gets on my nerves. I feel like, well, why can't we, as business owners, have a grip on this? And actually, let's find out why you can. So, the UK currently pays 4 times more than the US for energy. So all those guys from America, it's all right for you. But for us, we're paying 4 times more. And that's just not acceptable. And the other thing is that volatility has become the new normal. So what does volatility mean? So electricity that comes from the grid comes into your building and it is dirty. So that means there are spikes and troughs. And the only way to smooth that out is to use backup power systems or battery energy storage in some way. why is it volatile is because the growth of digital, AI and all of that, which is all great because we've heard about the AI and the rise of AI, and that's massively positive, but there are data centers needed to house all of that. So why is that a problem? Because the grid is becoming unstable, and ironically, the more renewables we throw onto the grid, like wind and solar, the more unstable it becomes, and it ain't getting any better. That's because the grid is aging. It's creaking at the seams. It's 60 years or more old, and there is no money to put into the infrastructure of the grid. It's just not where the money's going to go. The money is going to go into renewables, so we need to get ready for that. Now, why is that going to increase? Over the next decade, we're going to have volatility at 30% more in the next decade. So you can do something about it, though, and the technology is working for us. So where we've got advancements in digital and IT and so on, that plays all into the parts of things like solar PV. It's much more sophisticated than it used to be, and this is an example of a battery storage unit. It's not a fish and chip fan, by the way, but this technology is working for us. But it is also working against us. And Ireland, as many people know, is completely oversaturated with data centres, and our grid is struggling. Power quality issues are set to worsen over the next 5 years as the data centres increase. They aren't going away either. And there's controversy about the pros and cons of having data centres in Ireland. They bring loads of jobs, they bring prosperity to Ireland. However, they are very hungry for power and resources like water. So let's look at some of the examples of where power quality issues have caused a problem. Some of you may remember that there was an outage in Terminal 5, and everything went to a complete and utter standstill. I don't know if any of you were there, but the carousels for the baggage, the check-ins, the whole thing just stopped. And what did that mean? Well, it was utter chaos. And there was lots of people scrabbling around to find out, why did it happen? Why did it happen? And it all sort of disappeared into yesterday's news. But I kept an eye on that, and I looked into why did that happen, because I suspected it's something to do with their backup power systems. And indeed it was. So their backup power systems, which would have been in a data centre, were not maintained properly. And you would think, why does a big company like British Airways allow that to happen? Surely not. But it's complicated, and one battery string in a backup power system that goes down can cause a catastrophic failure. Now, a lot of things have to happen. It's like a critical path for such a massive thing to happen as that. But we can see how even a few months ago, the entire country of Spain and parts of Portugal went down because the grid couldn't cope with what was happening. Now, you're sitting there as a business owner, completely powerless because, yeah, well, I get my electricity from the power grid, so what am I supposed to do? So you can do something about it, but you need to take control yourself. People are doing things about this, and partial fixes, though, can create bigger problems. And we've been in the power and energy world for about 15 years, and we've seen it all. We've seen what works and what doesn't work. Partial fixes, for example, business owners are at the moment feeling energy anxiety. It's low level, it's in the background. I know I need to do something, that renewable thing, I've got to do, maybe I'll put solar panels on the roof. So the first thing that they might do is that. And that's good, it's a move forward, but there can be issues with that. I'll come to that. You've got IT managers, and they are feeling this anxiousness all the time in that, are the systems going to go down, particularly in critical sites like hospitals. There was, I think it was about 3 weeks or a month ago, a major outage problem with the Southern Trust here in Northern Ireland, and the entire hospital had to close, turn people away. appointments had to be cancelled, chaos. Why? Because their backup power systems didn't work when they needed to work. There is still under investigation, so I don't know the whole detail of it, but suffice to say, it's not really their fault. It's just that that's the world we're living in, and these things collide and cause problems, and before you know it, it's too late. And then there's the guys on the Gemba and the maintenance teams, and they feel that downtime dread. Ah, shit, that thing's gone down again. Scrabble, scrabble, scrabble. Where are we going to go? Oh, phone that number. Yeah, I think they can do it. And that causes them to have downtime and fear of constantly working against problems with power. So why does energy resilience matter more now than ever? So resilience means resilience to power fluctuations and power ups and downs. So for a building like this in the Titanic, even people going up and down the lifts can cause a power fluctuation. And how that would be seen would be the lights flicker a bit. There might be somebody working upstairs in an office environment and the screen just goes black, just momentarily, no big deal. But it is a big deal if that is actually connected to something critical like an operating theatre in a hospital. So labour and materials, they can be controlled. They're the things that business owners can raise up or down. Let's get more staff. Let's reduce the number of staff. Materials, okay, we're going to increase our machinery, or we might even build out a new site. You can control that, but you cannot control the tariffs that you pay for your energy. That is out of your control. And this is where the waste comes in, and this is what we've discovered since we went on our lean journey, how energy is actually very wasteful across every area of the business. And it's a bit like AI. AI isn't one thing that you're going to buy. It's not one plug-in. It goes across every single part. So out of all the wastes, energy can be seen across all of those. But let's nail that down into the three main pain problems of energy waste. Firstly, waiting. So waiting, power quality issues cause downtime. Guys on the Gemba, they need to wait for the tooling machine to go back on, or they need to wait for the lights to go back on, or it might be even worse than that, like the Southeast Trust, or the Southern Trust, or the entire country of Spain. Well, there's a lot of waiting because they have to wait for the actual power to come back on. So remember, it's not just a total blackout, it's power quality issues. Then you've got uncontrollable energy costs reducing profits. So when we say uncontrollable energy costs, that might be you turning on machines half an hour before the team come in, just because. That's what we've always done. The guys are coming in early in the morning, say you're in a bakery or some situation like that. Well, we turn everything on about half an hour before they come in. That's waste, because maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe just turn it on 20 minutes before they come in. So little things like that. Fear of backup systems. And the world that I'm in backup power, is very complicated and specialist. And it's run by OEMs and other providers like us. That industry is all about make it complicated, lock in the software, call the experts. So what does that mean? It means the guys on the Gemba, they've got this machinery, they might already be electricians or electrically trained, and that backup power system does not want to be touched. Do not touch it. That's waste, and I'll show you why. The winners, though, are thriving. And this is an example of a project that we were involved in approximately 5 years ago. And this university, Swansea University, were doing a new build at their Swansea Bay campus. And they came to us, and you can see the building in the sort of centre there, the red bricked building. That's the new build. But before that was built, they came to us and said, we need this entire building to run as a microgrid. We want to come off grid and we want to run completely without the grid for a number of reasons. But obviously, it was sustainability. They were a very sustainable university. But they also did it for, in terms of students being able to learn how can you play with electricity? How can you come off grid and use different technologies to turn the solar on, turn the solar off, and see what happens? So this was actually one of the smallest projects we did, but that is able to power that entire site and 5 EV vehicles without grid. So that was 5 years ago, and you would call them an early adopter. There was no mucking about with procurement. It was, yep, we want it. Can you help us to size it? This is the way it's going to go. So they have eliminated their dependence on centralized power. They are distributed energy. Distributed energy. There are also losers. So this is an example of a well-known British brand called Dunoon, and they announced around May time that there was going to be a 20% downturn in their workforce due to just a downturn, and they are set to close. The one thing that they have cited as why it's happening is because their electricity, the cost of running their plant, is 6 times higher than it was 3 years ago. So it's untenable. They can't go on. It's ceased. It's too late for them. So look, going back to what happens when the production flow stops, the energy costs continue. There's things in your building that you can't just turn off. To give you an example of one of our customers, and it's in the food production, they supply eggs, and eggs for all over the UK, for Sainsbury's, Tesco's, and so on. Their sorting machine for the eggs, if that goes down, that could cost them £3,500 for 5 minutes of downtime. Never mind the waiting that is not even put into that figure, but the hanging about, the guys on the Gemba, back to that. So again, that's all waste. And is that common? Yeah, it is quite common, because a lot of us in the food manufacturing industry in Northern Ireland are in rural areas. And that causes a problem because the grid gets worse and worse and worse as it networks out across the rural areas. So they are tolerating blips and spikes and troughs quite often. So we see energy as absolute muda. It's the waste everywhere. But there are competing stakeholders in any organisation. So these are the kind of people that we talk to about an energy project. You've got Operations Olivia, and she's the person that wants to stop paying for non-value energy use. So what would that be? Non-value energy use is having a machine running all day, every day, just because that's the way we've always done it. It's paying for energy that's running at a different tariff. So some of the customers that we have decided things like, right, we're going to run the plant all through the night because the tariff is lower. And in order to do that, we need evening shift workers, but that is going to be a great payback. That means those guys will not have to come in and we can shut the shop all day Friday. So it's clever things like that with playing with the tariffs. So that's what Operations Olivia might be looking at. Then you've got Facilities Frank. So he wants to eliminate downtime and reduce bills. So he's going around the place looking at, right, okay, we want to eliminate downtime. We need a UPS, which is an uninterruptible power supply system. That's the backup system that cleans the electricity that I mentioned. So Facilities Frank would be like our customer guy on the ground. They know what they're doing, and they need to eliminate any downtime. But they've got different requirements to perhaps Sustainable Sarah. Sustainable Sarah, she needs to meet her ESG goals. So that's all to do with the supply chain, and the supply chain will dictate, right, you better make sure that this is a green factory or that you're eliminating waste, you need to prove this. And many of you familiar with ESG goals. So Sustainable Sarah, hard to say, she's focused on those things. But then you've got the owner and the investor perhaps who's saying, hang on a minute, that's big capex there. You want more UPS systems or a battery storage system? Nah, that's too much money. I need to protect my profits. So those competing roles actually cost waste. So when we go to talk to people or an organisation that says, yeah, I want to actually look at waste and my energy waste, we often only get to talk to one or two of those stakeholders because they are given the project. And sometimes you even might find that you've got a renewable energy manager, and that's like a new job title. But what works best is if you actually think about it in terms of, right, there's waste everywhere in energy. Get together as a team and discuss what the goals are together. And this is what we've learned through the lean community. Collaboration, but doing collaboration with major projects. So by aligning all these stakeholders around one system, you can treat energy waste like any other waste. And that can help Sustainable Sarah meet her goals alongside business owner. And this brings me back to why we're so passionate about helping Ireland to become the next Japan. We see this as the absolute key to the lock of profitability. It's 4 times more than the rest of than America for energy. We are being dictated to by large conglomerates and the outside world. What are we going to do if there's another war somewhere else? The electricity prices, which includes the gas, all energy prices are dictated by global politics and all of these things that we can't control. So if we're really passionate about making Ireland the next Japan, we need to take back control of our energy. And that means acting soon, not in 5 years' time, not even in 3 years' time. The technology is here. What are we doing about that? Well, as Matthew mentioned, I was on a training program called ScaleX 3 years ago. And during that program, we were part of the program, part of our homework was to write our vision. And I was so inspired by Ryan, Jonathan, and Martin Tierney and their vision, which I can see coming to life, actually right in front of my eyes. We're here because of what those guys have done. And I wrote my vision at that time, and it was very, very lofty, but I've already achieved many of the things on that vision, and that was almost 3 years ago. One of the biggest moonshots was that we would build battery energy storage right here in Ireland because the manufacturing's here. We've got the knowledge. We know how these systems work. But the demand outweighs supply. So it's difficult sometimes for us to get in the queue and get that supply to our customers. It's not bad, but it could be better. How could it be better? Let's build our own factory. There's plenty of people in this community that could build the things that we need. And we've partnered with Queen's AMIC, and we've put together a proof of concept for this. And that was a year ago. So I'm just going to show you a short video of what they did. This was the lean factory that they came up with. So this is all just prototype. Nobody else has seen this except in that room with Queen's AMIC. It's very cool. It looks a bit like Toyota, and it's very exciting. How it will actually happen in practice, we now need to move on to the next stage. And we were delighted that last month we got positioned onto a programme with Innovate UK. So we got a place on a programme that's going to take this further and help us to get in front of investors to be able to actually map this out, work out how much is it going to cost, where is it going to be. My dream is for it somewhere in this harbour estate, because that's where our offices are. And I think, bring it home, bring it back to Ireland, let's do this, because that way we can get further up the supply chain and we don't need to wait for the suppliers that we have, which are very, very good. Some of them are in the UK, some are in Sweden, some are in South Africa. That's all good. They are good suppliers. We've spent over 5 years finding that supply chain for battery storage, but this is our moonshot. So that's between you and us. Don't tell anybody else. Our lean path to energy resilience then is how have we packaged up what happens in a typical site that needs to happen to eliminate waste with energy. And we call this the Endless Energy Accelerator, and it's got 5 steps. So let's go through them. Step number 1 is tailored, optimized design. What does that mean? Okay, we are not about selling you metal. That'll fix it. We're about tailoring that in a vendor-neutral way. So we can go to our supply chain, which may be a large global company, but there are different brands within the UPS world, that's uninterruptible power supplies, and battery storage that are competing with each other. And what they want us to do is to sell more and more and more of their product. And we say, no, we will use something from there, and a rack system from there. So what we do is a bit of a pick and mix, but that means that we're vendor neutral. We're not pushing any product. We're trying to find out, what do you need? And from that, we can work it out. It's designed for your site and your goals. So we go back to Sustainable Sarah and the business owner. What are your goals? And this is very, very important. We've just finished a project, for example, that started about 2 years ago. And their brief was, at all costs, this is about SDG goals. This is about, we've been told by America that our site needs to be running like a microgrid, so off-grid. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care if it's going to take 15 years for payback. Get it. And then there are other sites that say, right, we need a return on investment of 5 years. If you can't make that work, we're out of here. And that's fine. So finding out what are the site goals is very, very important. And that avoids costly missteps. So there are other instances where the customer might come to us and say, right, we need a 2 megawatt battery storage system. We've got solar panels on the roof. We're going to extend that, and we need 5 UPSs for this, that, and the other. Don't tell us anymore. We know what we want. Fine, okay. Can we help you to work out if that's correct? No, just get on with it. So we have had that, but we found that coming into the project, actually, you've oversized the solar. You've paid far too much for that. You didn't need to. So we try as far as possible by that first step, and this is avoiding waste. It's backwards and forwards with contractors and M&E consultants. We don't want that. It's a waste of their time, it's a waste of our time, and it's a waste of energy. So the second thing is trusted install and commission. And through working on our own internal systems, we've eliminated all sorts of waste with that. So get on site, help for this to be installed, and do it in the best possible way. So what does that mean? It means pre-site readiness. And you can apply this to anything that you do. So even Alistair and Joy that are working in photography and so on, they can apply this because pre-site readiness, right? Get to the Gemba Summit, make sure you've got all your cameras, make sure you've got everything you need, make sure you've got a backup plan. You might even need a backup batteries, by the way, and things like that. So pre-site readiness is part of our lean journey. We do not go to site unless we've got all of these checks. It seems obvious, but it's part of our continual improvement. Guaranteed OEM expertise. So you need someone that knows what they're doing. The engineers need to have that software and that expertise. And then make sure remote monitoring is connected. Come to that. On the Gemba training, now this is another exciting thing that we've done. And sorry, Gemba docs, I forgot to put your logo on here, but make it visible, make it standard, and keep it flowing. So what we've done is, another thing that you might do for yourselves, if you are selling a product and you're putting it out there and you're just distributing it to your customer, which we have been doing, and we might have a boxed system that they don't need any intervention from us, or it's a full-on 3-day install. Gemba Docs has been absolutely brilliant. So we remove this kind of expert thing from the Gemba. So we make it as simple as possible for whoever's on the Gemba to use our equipment, up to a point, because there are certain things that, like, don't touch that button because you might make it break. However, the Gemba Docs makes it really, really simple. So we shipped some UPS systems across to mainland UK, and we've got people there that are accepting that delivery. Previously, before we used Gemba Docs, that would have been pretty clunky. You would have got on the phone to one of our engineers. He would have said, put this button in here and connect that, and make sure you've got the right cable and all that sort of thing. Now we've got a Gemba Docs, and they simply scan the QR code, and they're eliminating the amount of questions that they need to ask us. So that's it. No waiting for the expert. The entire industry, as I mentioned before, is locked into, don't touch that, we're the experts, call-outs, remedials, that's how they charge. And we've thrown that right back and said, no, let's teach people how to use it. So for some customers, we might do a 4-hour workshop, which would maybe have 20 people in the room, and they are not electrical. They are the people that need to know what happens when there's an alarm storm. So they don't need to know the whole ins and out, but that gives them knowledge of, look, don't be scared of this. This is not a big scientific thing. You need to be empowered. Reason, because that frees you up to do your jobs. The fourth thing is a seamless service support. Do you remember the days when, not that long ago, if you took out a mobile phone contract, that was, you can have this, this, and this. So it was like the bronze, silver, the gold, and you were all very confused and you didn't really know what to do. And you just sort of think, oh, right, I'll just take that one. Well, in this world and the maintenance world in general, it tends to be the same. So you can have that, or that. What we've done is we have applied lean to our service contracts, and we've gone, right, so we have got an office block up the road here, for example, as a customer. And we said to them, right, previously you had a service contract that meant that we would come out and do 2 PMs, preventative maintenances, a year. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And the cost of that might have been 3 times what it was when we revised that. And much to their delight, we said, but you know what, we're not going to come out and do any PMs. You're just going to have remote control monitoring on your UPS system. That's fine. We can see what's going on with your system live. You can see what's going on with your system live. And therefore, let's reduce all this man in a van, diesel waste. So that's one of the ways that we've done that. So it's been very bespoke with the customer and doing what the customer needs. So all of those self-service kind of attitudes has helped us. Learn and improve from call-outs, that's another one. So every single day we have a morning meeting, and on a Tuesday it's engineers' morning meeting, and they will report on the previous week on any call-outs. And in that time we will ask the 5 whys. Sometimes we don't need, maybe only need 3 whys, but we'll say, well, why did you get a call-out? Ah, well, it was because blah, 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 blah. Okay, is that something we can improve? Put it on the list, and that really helps us. And then fifthly, mentioned, it's the remote monitoring software. And this all came about because of the COVID pandemic. We were told at that time, a lot of our customers, for example, would be data centres, all the hospitals in Northern Ireland, some of them in the south, food manufacturers and so on. And they kind of, on new builds, they said, don't come on site, construction stopped, and whatever you do, your engineers can't come anywhere near us or our equipment. So I sat there down the road in the harbour estate. Everybody was on furlough. The weather was really good. I went, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because our whole business was about call-outs, remedials, repairs. That was how we made our money. And I thought there's got to be a better way. So I looked into it, and we now have remote monitoring on all our devices as standard. In fact, we don't really want to take you on as a service contract unless you're going to do this, because we need to get eyes into that machine, and your maintenance guys might be on call as well over the weekend. Why should they get into a diesel van, or even if it's electric, but why should they waste their time going to site to look at a piece of equipment that actually we could do right there on the portal through the remote monitoring? So it just makes sense in a lean way. And this is just an example of what it looks like on the mobile app. So you can see it as a single source of truth, real-time visibility of your UPS or your BES, and it tracks critical data. I just want to share with you this video of a battery energy storage project. This is one that we did recently. It's actually a combination. Thanks to Alistair for the amazing video. And this shows you about the size of what a battery storage system would look like in this is just one of our suppliers. So sometimes they're arriving in containers, like a shipping container, or they can be a very neat solution like that, which is modular. So what's the learning from that? The learning is there's challenges with every single project, not one size fits all. We are often asked, how much is that? We can't give a price until we've done all the modelling. And in that particular solution there, again, it was, we need to be off-grid. We have no grid. We have no connection with NIE. And by the way, if NIE came along to give us a grid connection, it's going to cost £1 million. That isn't plucked out of thin air. Those are big figures. They also had no data. So if you're doing a new build and we say, well, what's your energy costs? How, could give us some data. Sometimes there isn't any data. So we need to model that in a different way. The solution for them was battery energy storage plus solar plus generator. And also this grid, the battery device, the controller that is the brains of everything, is able to do grid export in the future. So the outcomes of that are really, really sophisticated BES controller. Third-party funding options are available, for example. So often, again, the owner-director has issues with the CapEx. That's okay, because there are CapEx and lenders that are available. This is another example of being lean with energy, where we had a project on the one on the right-hand side, which was actually for Queen's AMIC, and they are building a brand new facility that's going to be absolutely amazing for advanced manufacturing. So they're in the construction site and they've got no power. They don't want diesel generators chugging away all day to keep the power. And they don't need a lot of power. It's just for housing some of the office equipment and so on as they set up the construction site. So we were able to come up with a battery storage system, nice and clean, it's quiet, and it runs there all day to keep the power on that they need. And then that other one that's attached to the van, that's serving a really great problem for NIE. NIE are contracted to provide electricity to vulnerable people throughout the province whenever there is an outage. So perhaps somebody who's got medical equipment. And what they have done right up until now is get a diesel generator, put it on a van and take it to that housing estate where that vulnerable person is. But that's not very good for that person in that they've got a diesel generator, chug, 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 noisy, dirty, and it's chugging away for maybe 2-3 days until the power goes back on. And we've seen the different storms coming along, and they seem to be more frequent because of climate, global warming, etc. So that was, again, designed especially for them. The trailer, every single detail of that was designed for NIE, and it is still a proof of concept, but they love it because that little system can go anywhere. It's handy, and it's got remote control on, remote monitoring on it. So we can see that. I could look it up now if I wanted to see, where is it? It's in Macrofelt somewhere, and it's working, and everything's fine. So those are the tiny little wins, and those are very small battery storage systems. So what does it look like in a typical project? Again, we're often asked this, yeah, but what's my return on investment? And there is no one size fits all, but to give you an idea, we've done some modelling, and quite often projects can come in at under 3 years payback. So the capex seems a lot for a big storage system like the one that you saw. However, this is the kind of results you can get, whereas if it's just solar or wind alone, it could be maybe 10 to 15 years payback. Every site being different, so the battery storage system is the boss of the site, by the way. So it's got the most sophisticated controller, and it will tell all the other things what to do, when to turn off, when to turn on. But every site may have different assets, different power assets, and we need to look at, right, what have you got at your site before you can avail of one of these 4 things. So energy sponge, energy arbitrage, grid services, and EV charging. Now, some customers, clients can get the full stack or maybe just one of those things. It's a sort of mix and match. But these are some of the organisations that we are working with that are really taking back control. It's manufacturing, it's heavy industry like quarrying, big pharma. They have massive electricity bills and energy bills, and often, again, they are located in rural areas where the grid is unstable. And critical IT, so we would look after, for example, the data centres for BT across all of Belfast. So if the power goes down, if your broadband went down and your Wi-Fi went down, that might be our fault, because the data centres are all backed up by critical UPS systems. So what do we do about it? Now is the prime time to act. And I feel so passionate about this. It's almost like I've got an iPhone in my pocket. I do not pay for every phone call that I make because I can do a free call with WhatsApp. And you're out there with your Nokia and you're struggling with, what tariff will I buy? And I'm saying to you, well, this iPhone will do everything. And you're saying to me, yeah, but it costs you £600 or £700. And guess what? My Nokia was only 80 quid. I get it. You've got competing priorities. But the demand for battery storage and for the chemistry that goes into those systems far outweighs the supply. And the supply is being eaten up by the EV market. So what we call stationary storage, which is battery energy storage for a site. Remember, let's go back to distributed energy. We want you to be distributed. We don't want you to be in this centralized world. So if we go right back there, that's the second cousin to the EV market. That's also why we want to build a factory. But you need to act now, because a project could last 4 to 6 months and it's going to get worse, because that chemistry is not in abundance. There's going to be a time limit to that. And whilst other chemistries are coming along day in, day out, and on the Innovate UK programme we're on, there's people in there that are developing different chemistries for different battery modules to make it safer, cheaper, and so on. So it will happen. But if you sit back and wait for government subsidies, Invest NI, tax, and all these sorts of things, it'll be too late. And Northern Ireland tends to be, and Ireland, a little bit late to adopt anything. And this is my plea, I guess. It's like, get on with these projects and try and take control of your own energy, because it is not going to get any better. The grid is not going to be improved. So the key to taking back control is lean energy, and that will give you resilient growth. And if you want to find out a little bit more, we've got an energy quiz that you can QR code. That'll take you on a link and a journey of where you are now with your energy. We're very happy to open up, it says there are 20 consultations, just forget that, that was done for a previous presentation. But we want to talk to anybody in the lean community that is willing, that wants to find out what more can I do about this, or just any questions about it. We're fine. Book a call with us, and we're very happy to help in any way we can. Thank you.